Hi, my name is Raleigh Ems, and today I'm going to talk about the blood-brain barrier and how it pertains to Alzheimer's disease. We're going to explore how this may be a potential new therapeutic target to help treat Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's disease results in many neurologic symptoms. It's a degenerative disorder, meaning it only gets worse and worse, and it's not related to normal aging. It causes behavioral issues, memory loss, and a loss of intellectual function. There are suspected to be 5 million Americans living with the disease today. This is especially a problem because a group of over 70 million baby boomers are only getting older. This is an issue, and why so much effort goes into researching the disease. People with Alzheimer's have two unique characteristics that can be seen in their brain. The first is amyloid beta, which is extracellular, meaning outside of the neurons, and they form clumps in the brain, and I'll show more in a second. This will be the focus of my discussion. Tau, which I won't focus on as much, disrupts the transport system of neurons. And they are inside of the neurons, which is called intracellular. And I'll note that these characteristics are two proteins. There's other characteristics of Alzheimer's, but I'm not going to discuss those. So here's a pretty simple drawing that I made demonstrating a neuron on the right, and neurons have a fat part up here called the cell body, and they send information down these long tracks called axons. And tau, which I discussed, blocks this transport of information. Whereas amyloid beta, which will be the main focus of my presentation, accumulates in these sticky clumps called plaques inside the brain, in the extracellular space. Amyloid beta is made in a pretty complicated process that I won't go into much detail with, but you can think of a precursor protein gets processed in a unique or incorrect way to form this little sticky red part here. And these red parts clump together to form those plaques, those sticky plaques that are characteristic of Alzheimer brains. So what's the blood-brain barrier, and what's it have to do with Alzheimer's? The blood-brain barrier is a protective surrounding of your blood vessels in the brain. It protects the brain because there's things in your blood that you don't want getting in your brain necessarily. As you can see here, there's a bunch of cells that surround this blood vessel, which you can think of as a vein or an artery. And these cells prevent things from going in and out of the brain. Whereas if you have a normal blood vessel, say in like your arm, things can go in and out pretty freely. The things that go in and out of the blood-brain barrier are very well regulated. Only specific things are let in and out. A new study suggests that pericytes, which are a blood-brain barrier cell, are transporting those amyloid beta proteins out of the brain and into the blood. You can think of this as like a drain for amyloid beta to leave the brain. The more amyloid beta you have, the worse your pericytes are. Kind of like the amyloid beta is clogging that drain. And thus less amyloid beta can get out of the brain, and you get kind of a snowball effect. Here's a picture I drew of amyloid beta in a normal brain. It shows that amyloid beta is being cleared by these pericytes, transported from the brain into the blood. The pericytes are draining the amyloid beta from the brain. With damaged pericytes, the amyloid beta can no longer leave the brain into the bloodstream, and thus it can accumulate and form those plaques that are so devastating. So why do we care? What can we do with this information? And theoretically, there could be a drug developed to fix and or restore the pericyte function, kind of like a Drano to unclog the drain and fix the pericyte so the amyloid beta can leave the brain again, thus decreasing the amount of plaques formed. But Alzheimer's is very complex. A new study suggested that tau, which I didn't really cover as much, might be the main culprit in the disease. Yet there's hope for the future because scientists are looking into the basic biology of the disease and trying to find new targets for treatment like the one I discussed. Maybe you're familiar with someone who has Alzheimer's and thus know firsthand that it is something that is a big problem for society, and I believe we need to put a lot of time and effort into solving this problem. Maybe our generation doesn't have to suffer from Alzheimer's. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. I hope it was useful. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask by leaving comments. I'd love to hear feedback. Thanks again.